Gluing PVC together can be a little intimidating, but I always remind myself, there are plenty of things to be scared of when it comes to keeping fish in your pond. Things like ammonia spikes, bacterial infections, your pond springing a leak, or your mother-in-law lecturing you about how your koi pond isn't good enough for her daughter. But welding your PVC joints together is one thing you shouldn't be scared of. At least, not after watching this video. Because today, I'm going to show you how to not only glue your joints together, but all the things that go into plumbing a complicated filtration system for a koi pond. I mean, for reals, my plumbing is out of control. But Ty, I hear you ask, all of your plumbing is already glued together. How are you going to teach us how to glue stuff if you're... Listen, I'll explain. But first I want to clarify that while I may not be a master plumber, I'm also not a licensed plumber. But luckily for me, one of my best friends is. And I have learned so much from him. And honestly, in the course of building this pond, I think I have managed to improve my plumbing DIY skills tenfold. Currently, the water going into my trickle towers comes down into this 4-inch pipe and then continues on into the bog filter, which sends all the water down these 5 spillways right here. The only problem is winter's coming and I need to put a cover over this entire pond. That's not going to really work with these spillways, putting water on top of the cover I need to build. I get it, just make a second cover. No, I don't want this water stirring up into... That's how I want to do it. My plan is to add a Y here so that water will end up going out through this 3-inch pipe right here. It means I need to shut that pipe down and remove it from this stack right here. Inside of my pond there are 3 returns. One in this wall going that way, one in that back wall going this way, and one right there that shoots water this direction. The one against that wall right there, we are going to make it so all this water coming out of the spillways is now going to be pumped into the water to that return. Now we're going to need a couple of tools. That isn't one of them. And neither is that one. We will need a measuring tape, and we will need a reciprocating saw. We will need a drill so that we can punch a hole through the floor with the hole saw. Level, 100% most important tool. Marker to mark the pipe with is nice to have. PVC glue to weld the joints. And primer. Sections of the plumbing today are going to require me to shut off the pumps. And so we are going to go ahead and have the aerator going so the fish are happy and have plenty of oxygen in the water. So with cutting this pipe, the thing I'm most worried about is the water level in the pond, which I believe is about right here. I have shut off the valve down here in the wall that pushes the water into the pond, but this pipe's just going to be full of water. There's nothing I can do about it. One trick with oscillating saws is the guard right here. You want to push it into the thing that you're cutting. Because if you're out here, it's just going to be... You're just going to feel stupid doing it. So just push in and cut. Alright, well that's done. PVC primer is the bane of my existence. Stuff gets everywhere. You spill one drop of this and you have at least 10 gallons on the floor. You can get clear primer, get it, but it's not something readily available. The reason it's purple is because if an inspector needs to inspect the plumbing and they need to know that you did prime all the joints, the purple's just going to stand out like a highlighter. It's very obvious if you did use primer or not on your joints. But this is a pond. Nobody's inspecting this. It's not going to flood your house. A rule I've made for myself is I always cap my primer when I'm not using it. It is not worth spilling it. Not that it's expensive, it's just a pain in the butt. Yabber dabber. You can use blue hot weld glue if you want. After using it for a long time though, if you're messy with your gluing, it's all your joints will look like you murdered a Smurf. And that's why I go with the clear. Heavy duty. This stuff works way better than just the regular clear. And when you do this, you put the glue, just like with the primer, you put the glue on the pipe as well as on the joint. And when you push it on there, you do a small quarter turn and you hold it for about 15 seconds, 20 seconds. And that joint is glued. Out of all the plumbing we're going to be redoing, this was the easiest piece. So I thought we'd go over the basics here. Now we'll get into the complicated stuff. As of right now, the water from my trickle towers all accumulates here in this 4-inch pipe and then ends up going to the bog filter. Now, in order to make it so water does not go to the bog filter anymore, we are going to be putting in this 4-inch to 3-inch Y. Why? Because there are times when not to weld PVC fittings together.
I know, Ty, but you just said that you should never be afraid to weld the pieces together and...
Listen, it's possible, I know I can do it, but if I was to need to change this for some reason later, it makes more sense to use a rubber coupling, like a Fernco or something like this. Now, I wouldn't use a Fernco if this was a pressurized pipe, where I had water that was being pumped into it, but since the water is just draining out of here, this is fine to use. With adding this fitting, the instinct might be to go ahead and throw this up and mark where we need to cut the pipe, be able to weld and fit this into place, or in our case, use Ferncos to attach all this. But oftentimes you need to think backwards with plumbing, because the concern I have is where this pipe right here is going to end up coming from, and making sure that all the angles and everything are going to work. So do we need to actually have this scooted forward this way a little bit, or this way, or back a little bit? That's what we need to figure out first.
In a past video, I had talked about pointers, basically using a pipe as a guide, a way of seeing where things are going to line up and how they are going to look. I think that it's an invaluable tool. You just need a scrap piece of pipe laying about and hook it up and see how it's all going to look. Now that I have a rough idea of how everything is going to line up, I mark on the pipe where I need to cut so that I can fit the fitting in. When I cut this pipe, I knew there was going to be water in it. I just didn't expect how much there would be. Luckily, I had a piece of pipe so I could funnel it. After I've cut a pipe, I always like to take my knife and just remove all of the little burrs and things so that we can have a nice clean weld. I realize a lot of the plumbing we're doing today might not be as helpful if you are plumbing a pond from scratch. But I think the fundamentals here still apply. We might not be going over flow rates and different types of filters and things, but as far as figuring out pipe angles and some of the trickier aspects to assembling the plumbing, I hope this video can be helpful.
The more I've been staring at this, the more I think I do just want to go ahead and weld it. I said a lot of stuff about Ferncos. I'm just going to return those and get my money back. There is a technique to be able to put these two pipes together. It's kind of tricky because, let's see, as you can see, this is cut so that the pipe can recess into this on both sides, but obviously I can't move the pipes those directions, right? Because of the bulkhead up here and because of... So here's what we're going to do, is we are going to put this in at this angled position, and we are going to muscle and pop. Just going to pop it into place. Which is way easier said than done. I don't actually know if we can do it with how tight it is. Screw it. We're going to do it. We're going to try it. Just pop it and lock it. Pop it and lock it. That is at the ready. Primer gets everywhere. Look at all that. Everywhere. Okay, there's no turning back now. No turning back now. You have to grab the level and get the 3-inch pipe where it needs to be. All right, here we go. This pipe was such a fight. The uniseal started leaking on the left side. You can see my hands just slipping and sliding, and I could not get a good grip on this thing to force it into the joint. I knew I was probably going to have to muscle it into place. I just did not expect it to put up such a fight. I ended up putting my hand up through the 3-inch hole just to check the seal, and it seemed like it had a pretty good weld in there, but it just, I really wanted it to slip on all the way. When in doubt, I guess just grab a hammer. Before everything started setting up, I remembered that I needed to get the level out. That way I could make sure that the 3-inch pipe coming out the bottom was going to be level and lined up the way it needed to be. This part was pretty stressful, but we got it done in the end. This was the second time I've ever had to pop and lock a fitting into place. I don't anticipate you'll run into this. But from here on, the rest of the plumbing should be a lot more fun and exciting. Not stressful. I always like to mark my pipes with a little arrow, that way I know exactly where the cut needs to be. I touched on this briefly earlier, but after your pipe is cut, primed, and glued, and you're ready to put it in, you just need to be sure that you put this little right here, this little quarter turn on the pipe. Most fittings have these little notches on them. They're there just to make it a little easier so you can figure out how to line up two fittings that are next to each other, or what I like to do is use the words printed on the side of the pipe and line it up that way. On this 45-degree fitting, we are putting the level on it to get it level so that we have a good foundation on our angles to work off of. With this level, everything else that we're going to be plumbing below should be a lot easier to put together and make sure that it all flows right. I like using 45-degree angles as much as possible for flow rate. They just allow the water to flow a lot better than a 90-degree angle would. Now that this pipe is level and how we need it to be, we are going to take our marker and just put a small little mark on it. That way, when we go to glue it again, all we have to do is line up the mark on the pipe and the mark on the fitting. We need to drop down, and we are going to be heading through the floor now. Two options are a normal 45-degree elbow and a 45-degree street elbow. The difference being that with the 45 street, it'll slide right into our last coupling. Because of stuff we're going to run into underneath the floor in a little bit, I'm going to opt to put in the street elbow, because that is going to get us closer towards this side. And we need to be closer to this side because of, well, those 4-inch pipes coming straight up out of the ground. They are going to be in our way. So we need to be on this side so that we'll be able to go around them.
Now that we have our street 45 in, I took a 3-inch pipe and put it into it. That way I'd have a better idea of where the hole is going to be going through the floor. I marked that, and now we drill. Drilling was a little tricky because the 45 was in the way. So my focus was just to get the hole started. Then switch to going underneath the floor and drilling up from there.
As you can see, there's our pipe, there's our hole where the pipe needs to come down. And then we have these 4-inch pipes that are in our way. There's our hole. Hold on, can you see it? There's our hole. But we need to send the pipe down that way to that guy. That slide valve. So we're going to have some fun angles to work with in here.
I measured and cut a 3-inch pipe and then slid it up through the hole we drilled to glue it into place into the fitting.
So now we're ready to plumb underneath the floor. This 45 right here is not going to work because of this 45 that drains from the drum filter. So 45 won't work. Luckily I have with me a 22.5. And that will work. So we have that 22.5 into another 22.5. That gets us a 45 right where we need to be roughly. Let's see. Yeah, these 22.5s, they almost feel like a cheat code, you know? Just let you do whatever you want. Screw the rules. But I'm gonna glue these together before I do that. I haven't actually glued these yet. Just wanted to see how it fits first. That's pretty good, but I think we can do a little better. We'll shorten that up a little. What kind of shape are we in now? Oh yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. That will work. Pointer time. Oh. Okay.
This was a tricky piece, not in the sense that it was difficult. It was just a lot of finessing and making small adjustments here and there to see how things were going to line up. But this is the power of the pointer. Taking the time to get the angles right, to get all of your pipes cut and your fittings adjusted so that the water will flow the way that you want it to and be able to fit in the space the way it needs to. After all those small adjustments, it was finally time to glue this piece together. I felt really confident that it was going to do the job I needed it to at this point. I was having a tricky time figuring out how to get around this corner, and finally it was the 45 street elbow that gave me the solution I needed.
Smurf murder happened here.
The blue hot glue for welding PVC together works really well, but if you're messy with your joints, it will look like you murdered a Smurf. And I was trying to avoid that.
Not gonna lie, I'm pretty impressed how well we are threading that needle right there.
I've done some plumbing in some pretty tight corners, but this right here, the space between that post and the pipe, was a much snugger fit than I had anticipated.
Crazy looking zip ties.
I was shocked that I was out of plumber's tape since I originally bought something like a 100-foot roll, but what can you do?
I might have to break out the x-ray vision for this next one. So to recap, we have our pipe coming down here that we now need to get connected to that pipe and this valve.
These are just some of my personal opinions about working with flexible PVC versus the traditional rigid kind. The flexible kind, it's very forgiving. It gives you a lot of flexibility, and I think it does make it a lot easier to run all your plumbing. However,
oh, look how gross my hands are.
It costs way more than traditional PVC, even with all the fittings and everything. And you're still going to need to use fittings with the flexible kind.
I think this right here is a good example of when using flexible PVC makes a lot of sense. In this tight space right here, connecting my drum filter to my two pumps, I have a 3-inch flexible PVC pipe to make that work. The angles are tricky, it's difficult, and this is where I would definitely opt to use it. These other places I used flexible PVC were really just because I was out of other PVC and I had a ton of this flexible stuff on hand, so why not use it? Yes, dab, dab, dab.
Hey, it's me, editing this video late at night. For some reason, I didn't hook the microphone up right when I was filming this part, so ignore that guy. He doesn't even know what he's talking about. Basically, we have the plumbing all redone, we're all ready to go. Now we're going to actually open up the valve and start running the water from the trickle towers down through that pipe and bypass the bog filter. So the water is going to go straight into the main water column. We're not going to go over those spillways anymore. I'm going to just test it and see how it works.
I'm imagining these little drips are going to be going for a while until that bog has emptied itself out a little bit more, but overall the fish seem pretty cool with it. Now, the reason I wanted to turn these spillways off is so that the cold air and that water hitting the cold air isn't getting turned up into the main body of water. Plus the cover that's going to go over it. There's lots of reasons for why I wanted to be able to bypass these. It does require me to turn the pump down. I have a variable speed pump, which is nice, so you can adjust the flow rate, but it works. I can redirect and send water through that return over in that corner now. Long explanation, long video. Fun times. Turn the pumps back on, we got everything rolling. I am going to go ahead and leave them going until it's time to actually build the cover. It works. It seems to work anyways. Happy with plumbing, happy fish, happy plumbing. Happy greenhouse. Good start on the greenhouse. It's coming along. The video's coming out soon though. Anyways, I got plenty more videos if you want to check them out. They'll be somewhere over here. Thanks for watching. Bye.